Hello everyone. So I'm going live now for my experiences teaching in Hanoi, Vietnam. Sorry about this. A few last minute IT difficulties. Always make this a bit more fun. I'm Louis. I'm a teacher in Hanoi, Vietnam, as I've said. I've been here for kind of 2.5 months now. So I arrived in Vietnam on May the 1st, but I spent, obviously had my orientation week. I went on the program where I've already done my TEFL certificate back home. I did 120 hours, so I didn't actually have to do that whole week where people kind of came in and learned how to do the teaching English, because I've already done that, which is quite handy and quite fun. But I still got an orientation week. I was there with a few other teachers from all over the world. So I had someone else from the UK, someone from Australia, Canada, South Africa, you name it. They're there. And so what I'm going to do to break this down, I'm going to start telling you about my backstory, so who I am. Then I'm going to go about my story, how I arrived. Then I'll talk about my experiences, any struggles, anything that's really impacted my time here really. And then I'll talk about highs and lows, all the fun that goes with teaching abroad. So let's get started. So I'm originally from Southend-on-Sea in England. I have a degree. I'm 25 years old. I have a degree in geography and international development. I've always wanted to teach abroad. It's always been something that I've intended to do at some stage in life. I wanted to do my PGCE back home, but I thought going to Southeast Asia, going to a country where there's a positive approach to education, somewhere a little bit different to the UK, where it's a little bit crazy at times. I thought, this is something I really want to do on my bucket list, and I just looked for ways to do that. I went for a company called TravelBud, who put me in contact with Xplore Asia. So I've been dealing with Xplore Asia for quite a few months. I applied really early on, so I applied, it must have been around September time, I would say. And then I over the a few months from then, I got involved with Xplore Asia. I initially spoke to someone called Riyadh, and I've been speaking to the likes of Cassidy and all the team since. And it's been really positive. I think obviously there are some challenges. Obviously, teaching abroad, it's not as straightforward as one would think. I think for me, the biggest thing I had issues with, and I apologise again to Riyadh for and so many emails I sent him, but I just didn't get the visas. I didn't get how the visas worked. I didn't get how paperwork worked. I didn't really understand any of that. I just wanted to teach. That was my passion really, and that drove my decision making. And so Xplore Asia are really helpful with getting the visas and all the nitty gritty that I really struggled with really. And I've always wanted to teach, you see, so I just thought, let's go, let's do it. And I had the time, I had the money, and I wanted the most effective way to do that. And Xplore Asia is that really. If you're particularly from towns in the UK, we go, how do I do it? I've never done this before. I've never just decided to make a big life decision like this. And Xplore Asia do help with that. I think that's particularly from a Western point of view. Going to these countries is quite daunting, and for me, I find it quite daunting, the prospect of picking up sticks and moving thousands of miles away from my comfortable life back home. But it is possible, it's doable, and you get well supported along the way. So a bit more about my story really. So I did my TEFL course during COVID. I think everyone had a lot of free time. I took it to do my TEFL course. I did 120 hours, and so to teach in Vietnam, you have to get documents legalized. That's something that can be discussed. However, it's all circumstantial. it's all dependent on how long you intend to stay out here for. There's people who I've met on this experience who have been out here for several years. Some people only stay 3 months. So really, it really is subjective to kind of what you want really from your experience. I kind of don't know really how long I'm going to be out here for. Maybe forever, maybe if only a few months. We'll kind of see about that. But yeah, so it really is dependent on how long you want to be out here for. It depends on the amount of paperwork you have to do and how you get things sorted out. Obviously, teaching experience is valued, and I think one thing I picked up on is that schools like someone with good experience. It goes a long way. I think particularly in the West, from a UK perspective, we're quite we have our documents, everything's done quite professionally, and that is something that I think is valued because certain standards we uphold, and I think it's important to kind of get things done the right way. And so just continuing kind of my story really. So I arrived on the 1st of May. I arrived kind of by myself initially, but I met the other people on the course on the orientation week. We got along quite well. We got along very smoothly. Some of them I chat to all the time. Really, my cohort was quite small, but I've been told if you're on a bigger group, so if you're doing a TEFL course, for example, here, you get you get quite a big group of people. I was met by Lan, who was our in-country kind of host, in-country kind of leader and coordinator, and Jordan, who's from the UK. He's from the north of England, and you will get a mixture of both. So you will get a local, and you will get a Western person helping you out. I've was really good. The orientation week for me was a great way to kind of set any pre-match nerves. Really, was the best way to describe it. I was a little bit anxious perhaps about the decision. I was a little bit anxious about obviously moving countries. So that week was just a case of, hello, this is Vietnam, this is what to expect. They taught us like really, really basic stuff that you would take for granted, but like things like crossing the road. Crossing the road in Vietnam is an absolute nightmare. It does take a while to get used to. Also, people riding on the pavements. I didn't know that before I arrived. I wish I did, because when someone is trying to knock you down, not knock you down, but drive into you on the pavement, it does irritate you, or does drive you a bit mad. And I just didn't know why they were doing that. But they kind of sit you down and say, actually, this is why it is the way it is. And that in itself is, part of the cultural adaptation, I guess. But yeah, that first week you get to go to a trial school. You get to be taken to some quite cool places. So we got to see the tunnel systems in Ho Chi Minh, because that's where I arrived in Ho Chi Minh City and later flew out to Hanoi. But yeah, you get to see the tunnel systems that were used during the Vietnam War. You get to learn about obviously Vietnam as a whole. That was quite cool. You get to go to museums. You get to try local food. I love Vietnamese food. I really like kind of Asian cuisine or Southeast Asian cuisine back home, but I think Vietnamese food is quite unique. What I found here that I didn't realise is that every province in Vietnam has its own unique delicacy. So I think if you go to Ha Long, for example, they have octopus balls, which is something I didn't know, and obviously. If I'm not a big drinker, but definitely the different beers here are really nice. Ha Long Bay has its own beer. Across Vietnam, you might try different things, and it just shows that Vietnam is not kind of as it's got so much culture to it, and it's got so many things you go, wow, I just didn't know that. And you can tell it with the people, the way the language is. There's so much kind of going on with it. But yeah, so back to my week. I before I arrived, I got my placement sorted out, so I knew exactly where I was going to go before I arrived. I got work for a company called Athena, which is a agency which sets you up to go to language centres. I had a bit of contact with them before I arrived. Emails. I was putting a Zalo chat. If you haven't heard of Zalo, it's basically the Vietnamese WhatsApp. Might be good if you're ever thinking of coming over, just to have a look at it. It is what they all use. They do use WhatsApp, but WhatsApp is quite Western. there are little there. So Vietnam is a little bit more opened up in some ways, but it's still a little bit closed off. I think it opened up in the 90s, so there is Starbucks if you know, which obviously there is everywhere. There is McDonald's, but it's not very popular, so don't expect people to be, you know, eating chicken nuggets and Big Macs everywhere. It's just not very popular. I've only really seen it in kind of the central business, like really heavy business areas or in the touristy areas, but people just eat local food, which is better, it's cheaper, and it's just, you know, it's just better, I think, in general. But so I had my placement sorted out before I arrived. It was quite smooth. To get an apartment sorted out, there are Facebook groups, there is, you name it, you know, Facebook, contacts, everyone knows someone. But I think the best way is to use the information that Xplore Asia provide. They do this all the time. I wouldn't question it. I kind of jumped the gun. I did as much research as I could, but obviously the pace of life here is very different. Back home, I like to plan 6-7 months. You know, I like to plan my whole life in advance. Here, it's a lot more last minute, or things are done at the pace that the country runs at. So please don't be shocked if you try and get a bit of accommodation and they will sort it out when you arrive. You have to go with the flow, and that's something I've definitely picked up since I've been here. So yeah, I've had my placement sorted out. I had contact with them before I arrived. So when I arrived for my orientation week, all I really had to do was get here, have a good time, teach a trial lesson, get to know my other teachers, and then I flew to Hanoi on the Saturday after our kind of welcome lunch, a welcome lunch / dinner thing. We had some beers, we had a good time, went to karaoke. Highly recommend karaoke over here. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, we just had a good time really. It was just a really good way to set aside any nerves and just have a bit of fun really before the real craziness starts. And yeah, so I arrived in Hanoi. I was put in temporary accommodation initially, but I had my apartment sorted in 2 or 3 days of being here. It can take longer, it can take shorter. There's no fixed or set way to do things, so please don't freak out if you haven't got accommodation after a week. Sometimes you just got to find the right one for you. And yeah, so when I got to Hanoi, I had a week where they kind of settled me in. I had to do a trial lesson, show what I could do, and really put my skills to good use. Native speakers are valued very highly here, so you are an asset, you are a skill. You people, they want you to be here, and yeah, they will take full advantage of that. One thing I do notice, and this is just something I think for kind of teachers in general, is that you're held to high standards, and this is perhaps higher standards than the locals sometimes show. I think this is just part of how you are viewed in society. Everywhere you go, sometimes kids just come up and stare at you. This is even in Hanoi. Obviously Hanoi is a bit less, but if you go to like some kind of the rural areas, I've heard you do stand out like a sore thumb. And they will expect you to show certain standards of behaviour, dress smart, interact with people, just be nice really. Sometimes the locals may not have that same Western standard, so don't be don't be shocked if people don't reciprocate your same approach. That's just part of life, and something that I think people need to be a little bit more aware of, I guess. Something that I was, why aren't things done this way? Why aren't things done like the way they are in the UK? You are in these countries, and you are in the likes of Vietnam, where they just have their own way of doing things, so you've got to respect that really. But yeah, so kind of continuing from my experience, so I work in 2 schools. I work in a Montessori during the day and a language centre at night. The Montessori is more like almost like a semi-private kind of kindergarten. Kids, I teach mainly kindergarten kids, obviously younger kids. I thought it'd be more fun. They are a lot more fun, a bit crazy than I expected. Don't expect little robots, expect kids with crazy personalities who will grab you and teacher. I'd get that a lot, or they will kind of chat to you. They are extremely interested in you. You get your bag open, You leave your bag open for 2 minutes, there's a hand in your bag. You bring in something new, you bring in a new watch. Teacher, what is that? Teacher, what is that? And some kids love to talk. I have one student who the whole lesson, teacher, 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 will talk to me the whole lesson, to the point where I love the enthusiasm, and I love the fact that he is keen to speak English, but sometimes perhaps they speak a bit too much. But no, it's not to discourage them. But the kids are a lot of fun, but they are a lot of energy. And if you maybe don't have experience teaching, be aware that they will. They do see you as like a bit of a funny Westerner. You are new to them, so they are very curious about who you are and what you do. And I think encourage the curiosity is what I've said, and what I've learned. Really, they will want to speak to you. Speak back. If someone talks to you in an elevator, or you're walking down the street and a kid just comes up to you and stares at you, just say hello. How you doing? And there is a culture here as well. I learned this my first few weeks. It's almost, they call it language hunting, so they basically, kids will come up to you to speak English. You could be sitting down just having a McDonald's or having a coffee, you name it. And a kid will come up to you and just speak to you, just to practice their English. So it does happen. It catches you out. Why are you talking to me for? Why are you here for? But they will come up to you, which is quite funny. But yeah, like I said, all this kind of cultural information, cultural shock, getting accommodation, everything you can think of, Xplore Asia do send over to you. They send over guides, they send over emails, and they will answer every question. So I've sent God knows how many questions to the team. I sent Cassidy, I sent Riyadh, I sent all the coordinators, every single thing I could think of, and every single question I got an answer to, which is really good. So what not to do, what to do, what should I really avoid, what can I get away with, what does this look like, what is the I've sent so many questions I've almost lost count, and use them as a resource. Even now, I send Cassidy, who's the one of the head coordinators, an email every now and then just to check in. Really, and you will get emails every few months or every few weeks. How's it going? Are you okay? Is there anything you need? So it's really good. There is support, sometimes, particularly when you're in a city like Hanoi or any other city, any place really, it can be quite isolating. You do go through. You might have a day where you might not see a Westerner. You might not see a fellow English speaker. So you have to be aware that there is a bit of loneliness that goes with it. So an email here and there goes a long way. Sorry, and that's something that they do here. They do. Xplore Asia know that you are, you're coming from a very, very different world, and they do everything they can to make the transition as smooth as possible. And that kind of leads on to my next point, really. So struggles. So the biggest struggles, I think, are perhaps the kind of way things are done. I like my Western ways of doing things. I'd like to be on time. I like to have everything prepared. Like I said, if I could plan years in advance, I would, and I do try. But here it's not. Here it can be quite last minute. They go with the flow a little bit, but also at the same time, they're very rules based in Vietnam. So expect things. It's kind of their way or the highway a little bit. So like I said about standards, according to kind of Westerners, they expect things to be done their way. They expect things to be done in a way that kind of makes sense to them. However, there may be sometimes a bit of difficulty adapting to the fact that you are not from their setting, so you don't know the rules. Sometimes when I go to a language centre, they expect you to know what's going on, which is pretty difficult when they communicate things quite last minute. So you have to be aware of that. You have to adapt quite quickly. And adaptation is a key part of skill, a key part of it. But it's a key skill that I've learned, and I think you will continue to learn, is you have to adapt things like lesson plans. Sometimes they'll give you a lesson plan. Sometimes they'll give you a few words. Sometimes you might go in there and it will be set up for you. Sometimes there'll be nothing set up. So adapt. Ultimately, treat it for what it is. It's not the end of the world. if any problems at all, just just be honest with them and say, I don't know what's going on. And they are very strong valued here. So things like getting things sorted out. If they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. They might not do it as quickly. It may be you may have to go through a maze and a few loops to get there, but things do get done, and have faith in the process. I just have this kind of this faith and belief that things will get sorted out, and they do. I think that is the beauty of going on these experiences. Everyone's here for the same reasons. They want good teachers. You want to teach. It's quite good. Everyone wants to work towards the same goal. So don't feel bad. Don't feel kind of scared, or don't feel kind of don't feel scared about anything really. If you have any concerns, it's part of kind of growing, and I think you come here to grow. And I've come here to learn how to adapt, and I think I've definitely learned that skill. So best part of teaching in kind of the country, best part of teaching in Vietnam, I think I'd say the food. I say the food is good. It's cheap. The lifestyle here is quite cheap, relative to West, relative to kind of back home. Like, for example, most of my meals cost between £1 to £2. I think I do treat myself to a Highlands coffee, which is Highlands is if you're from the UK, it's like a Costa here. You don't get it anywhere else in the world. And I have a baksu, and that is about 45k, which is about £1.50, maybe $2. I don't know the USD exchange rate. That is really good. I really like that. I like pho tron. Sorry, I'm trying to learn Vietnamese, but my Vietnamese is pretty bad. Pho tron and cha da, which is like duck noodles and iced tea. I go to not the same place, but similar places during my lunch break. Yeah, really, really good. I haven't paid more than £2 for food. If you're paying more than £2 for food in Vietnam, you're either going to somewhere that is either really fancy, or you're going to a Western place, because there's so many good places to eat for so cheap. And these places are not 5-star cuisine, but they're not kind of Michelin star restaurants, but they're good places, and they're good, and it's good local people, good hard working local people. So it's always good. I think the fact that also another thing, I like the fact that you're very busy. I never have a day where I go, I'm bored. I don't think I've been bored the whole time I've been here. I think maybe, you have moments where you're a bit bored. You have moments where, you may have a few classes that have been cancelled, and you may have a whole day, but you walk outside and you've got a whole big city, or you've got about 1,000,001 things to do, and you can just go and do that. Like, I live next to, I live in an area called Tay Ho. I live on Yen Phu Island. I don't know how much people know Vietnam or Hanoi, or Hanoi as a whole really, but there's a lot of lakes in Hanoi. There's a big area where the expats live. It's Tay Ho. I tried to position myself on the outskirts, so I live on Yen Phu Island. The views are amazing. If it wasn't 10 o'clock at night here, I would show you my amazing balcony view, and it is amazing. I go over there every morning. I love it. I absolutely love it. I pay for about £300 a month for my apartment. That includes bills, and so I probably spend maybe £600 to £700. So maybe £600 to £800 a month in kind of bills and living costs, and I get paid around $1,400 to kind of $1,500. The longer you are here, the more they really want teachers to stay long term. So the incentive is to offer better pay for people who stay longer. I know that if you go to a rural area outside of a big city, there are things like an accommodation grant. So they may pay, for example, I know a friend who gets $7 million to cover his as like a housing cost. So basically he gets near enough free housing as well as his salary. If he lives in the middle of kind of nowhere really, well, not nowhere, he lives in an interesting area. Okay, I've just seen a question. How do you go about getting a visa? So I'll answer this one. So the visas are kind of sorted out with Xplore Asia. Your company will sort your visa out for you. You have to get your documents legalized, depending if you want to stay here for a year or so. If you want to stay slightly short, so maybe 6 months, the process is slightly different. But you need to work on getting your documents legalized. That process can be quite complicated. I personally found it very confusing. Xplore Asia do help you navigate through it. So, but yeah, be aware that it can take a few months. So if you're interested in coming, do bear in mind that getting all the legalization, flights, etc., you need, I would say you need about 3 months at least, because it can just be a bit of a process. Please do bear that in mind. But like I said, Xplore Asia help you through that. There's guides upon guides, and they will tell you exactly what you need to do. So in total, how much roughly would you need to have before you go? How much what? Sorry, I don't really. How much money or how much documents? So documents, you need to have your degree, your TEFL certificate, a police check, and I believe there is one more document, but definitely your degree, a police check, your TEFL. So okay, how much money? Okay, so how much money? How long is a piece of string really? I would say, I would say probably around £1,500 would be good. Maybe they do have a guide on the website, but yeah, I think anywhere between kind of 1,200 to 2,000 kind of US dollars would be in that ballpark, because obviously when you arrive you had to pay a deposit for your accommodation, and you had to pay a months for your month's rent. However, you can get things for a lot cheaper. So I rent my own apartment. I wanted that lifestyle. I live in quite a kind of western area. It is slightly more expensive. If you wanted to rent out a room, I know someone who rents a room for £3.5 million a month, which £3.5 million is £150. Around that. It's not a lot. But yeah, I personally I don't like to say I live a lifestyle, but I joined a gym. I did spend a lot more money than I anticipated. However, I also think, this is a unique experience. You got to make the most out of it. Like I got a bike the other day, a little bike. I've been here nearly 3 months. I thought it'd be fun to ride. You can get a bike the first day you're here if you've got the experience. I think Hanoi is an absolute crazy place. If you try and cross the road, like I said, crossing a road in Hanoi, trying to do anything in Hanoi, it's a bit crazy. So I take things a bit slow. But yeah, obviously there are costs like that. So yeah, it's a bit of a tough one really, but it's all subjected to lifestyle. But yeah, living here is quite cheap. Like living costs, you're gonna be spending maybe if you spend more than $900 a month, then you're either living a really lavish lifestyle, or you are kind of you must be just going out every day. I don't know how you're doing it really. I spend a little bit. I booked a few trips. I've been to Halong Bay, I've been to Da Nang. I go out kind of pretty much Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm out. I go for beers with teachers. I go to cultural things on the weekend. I just go exploring really. So that's something you have to consider. It is quite easy to make friends here. If you go obviously in a Western area, you will meet a lot of Westerners. If you want to just make friends with locals, yeah, you can do that. Obviously, learning Vietnamese is a great way to obviously make that a bit easier. However, I'm aware that Vietnamese is very difficult. I find the language very tough to learn. It sounds like don't mean to insult any Vietnamese guys watching, but it sounds like you've almost got something stuck in your throat. It sounds like, like what da la zi is one syllable words. It's quite difficult to say. And I think for Westerners, it can be quite difficult. But like anything, you just got to embrace it, do it. I got the amount of times I go to the supermarket and just ask people, what is this? What is that? What is going on? And you just got to use it in everyday scenarios. If you drop a Vietnamese word in a class, the kids go absolutely mental. Not mental as in, they love it. They absolutely love it. They absolutely love it. Like a few times you go, oh, thank you, or come on. And they go, oh, wow, teacher, you speak Vietnamese? And go, yeah, so watch out what you're saying in Vietnamese, because I know what you're saying. And you have jokes with them, and they love it. They absolutely love it. So that's quite funny. So any Vietnamese you kind of use, it's a lot of fun, really. But yeah, it's really easy to meet people if you want to go. If you obviously you got to go to events, it's quite isolating when you get here. The first week or month can be quite difficult, but it gets easier. It's like anything, it's not going to be a straightforward arrive. You might have that experience. You might arrive here and have like a million friends in one day. I don't think that could happen. I think it's going to be a case of you get a few friends here, you meet new people, you build up your network. 6-7 months, you might have a big network. Or you might just not be like that. And I've got a few good mates here and there. That suits me. I meet people in my language classes, other teachers, people like that. There's a lot of transient people here. I had to bear that in mind. People come here, they travel, they leave. You might see people once or twice, and you might never see them again. So be aware of that. But yeah, so I'm aware that it's been half an hour. I did have a few IT difficulties at the start, so I've stayed for a little bit longer. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions or drop me a message. I'm more than happy to go through anything. Or if you want to know anything at all about Vietnam and living in Hanoi, please do let me know. I can send you some pictures, videos. I'm quite receptive to answering any questions. Obviously, if I don't know it, best way I found was to go on TikTok. I know I don't like TikTok myself. I'm a bit of a technophobe, but yeah, videos on TikTok were great. And obviously there's some resources online. You type into the websites that Xplore Asia recommend. They give reviews, etc. It's a good way to find out what's really going on. And obviously there is networks of English teachers as well, so kind of do your homework, figure it out really for yourself. Ultimately, it is your own unique experience, so make the most out of it. Definitely, if you've got the urge or itch to teach abroad, Xplore Asia is definitely the company you want to go for, because they do it all the time. So, if it's clearly working because hundreds of people are doing it. So I recommend doing it because it just makes your life a bit easier. And all that kind of hassle and kerfuffle, they almost translate the difficult to the hard, which is what you want, particularly in a world where visas and all this kind of crazy stuff is going on. But yeah, okay, I'm signing off. Nice to speak to you. Good luck. And like I said, if you're thinking about going to teach abroad, definitely consider Xplore Asia. Thank you.